So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So guys, we just had Robert the Ghost Guerrero against Victor Ortiz. Robert Ghost Guerrero wins a unanimous decision against Victor Ortiz. Guys, this was a fight between two veterans, two former world champions, two good fighters in their day. But what we saw there was a good fight for the first 3 or 4 rounds. You saw the veterans going at it, trying to take control. Victor Ortiz still got his hand speed early on. Robert Guerrero, stuck in there, and Robert Guerrero was landing good shots of his own. But what we saw then after about 3, 4 rounds is both guys feeling the pace. Both guys not the fighters they were. They faded without question. They both are faded fighters, but they're both tough. They're both tough, man. And you know what? You got to respect Victor Ortiz and Robert Guerrero. Like, Victor Ortiz has got a lot of stick over his career. People calling him a quitter, this, that, and the other. But Victor Ortiz has been in some great fights. The Maidana fight. I know we lost that. Great fight. Victor Ortiz has been involved in some wars. And the hype around Victor Ortiz early on in his career, they thought he was going to be an absolute superstar. The Golden Boy was promoting him, and people thought this kid was going to become, a legend. He didn't quite hit the heights that, we or people expected and how much hype he had around him. He didn't quite hit those heights, but still had a very solid career. And same with Robert Guerrero. Robert Guerrero had a very solid career also. And I think you've got to respect fighters like that. They came back now and they put on a good showing now. Towards the back end of the fight, there was a lot of holding and grabbing, and it got quite ugly and quite boring towards the back end of it. But nevertheless, I think both guys are just past their best. They're spent. They're not the fighters that they were. I think the right decision, I think it was probably the right decision in Guerrero getting the win. But I just don't think either guy was as sharp as they used to be. Either guy wasn't as fast. The reflexes weren't the same. The sharpness wasn't there. So it's probably best for both guys to probably walk away, because I don't know whether I do know. I don't think any of these two could really compete at the top level of the welterweight division. So if Robert Guerrero called out, I remember he called out Amir Khan on an IFL TV. He never called him out, but he said, I would love to fight him. Those are the type of fights that Robert Guerrero would be involved in, not in the high echelon of the welterweight division, because imagine someone like Virgil Ortiz against Robert Guerrero. It wouldn't be great to watch, and it was the commentator Matthew Macklin pointed that out on Sky, that, you wouldn't see any of these guys being used because both guys are big names, Victor Ortiz and Robert Guerrero. And let's be honest, I know Robert Guerrero got the decision. There wasn't a lot in it. It was probably the right decision in Guerrero getting the decision, but there wasn't a lot in the fight. There wasn't a lot in the fight at all. I didn't actually score it, but there wasn't a lot in the fight. I think, it was a close one. It was a very close one, but they're both diminished from what they were, so it was kind of an even fight. And at times it was entertaining. At times there were a lot of grabbing hold and a lot of clinching, and it was entertaining at times. It wasn't a boring fight by any stretch. It was a good solid fight, especially for the first 3 or 4 rounds. It was really, really good. But then it I think both guys started feeling the pace. And they slowed down a little, slowed down considerably, and that's when you saw the clinching, the holding. Early on, first 3 or 4 rounds, you didn't see that because both guys were, they were throwing caution to the wind, and they were both really going for it. Like I said, I think both guys showed a good chin. Victor Ortiz has got criticism over his chin and vulnerability, but actually Victor Ortiz in this fight showed a decent chin, and he's the bigger guy because Robert Guerrero is a smaller guy coming up. In terms of, Robert Guerrero won world titles at super feather and feather, whereas what's his name, Victor Ortiz was a welterweight world champion, so he's a lot bigger man. So that was a good win by Guerrero. Guerrero is a tough guy. Victor Ortiz was a lot more naturally gifted than Guerrero in their heyday. But the thing is, the qualities and the attributes that Victor Ortiz had that made him great are diminished now. I think prime for prime, I would have picked Ortiz to win this fight, but he's not in his prime anymore. Victor Ortiz is not got that same sharpness, the same speed, and Otherwise, otherwise I would have favored him to beat Robert Guerrero. But right now, I think he's definitely not the fighter he was. So yeah, I think the best thing probably for both guys is to retire. But like I said, I won't be surprised if they carry on. Guerrero carries on. Guerrero won. And I won't be surprised if Ortiz carries on, because like I said, they both did okay. They both did pretty well. They're just not the fighters they were. They're just not as good and sharp, and they're not as good as they once were, which is natural. Mother Nature taking its course. They've slowed down. The right man probably got the decision in the end, but good fight. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching two veterans go at it. It was definitely entertaining. Definitely enjoyed watching it at times. It was what it was. It was two old guys, veterans, giving us a good scrap. And let's see what happens. Let's see what happens next for both guys. I would hate to see either of them get put in there with like a Virgil Ortiz or a Jaron Ennis or something like that, because that wouldn't be great to watch, because of the fact that you have two guys that in their primes would have caused any welterweight trouble. I'm not saying they would have beat them, but they would have been able to give a good fight against anyone. Whereas now they're two guys on the serious decline, and it's good that they're fighting one another. Like I said, if like Robert Guerrero fought a Kell Brook or he fought Anime Khan, then that's not as bad, because you've got two guys at the same kind of level or the same stage of their careers. But if these guys were to fight up and coming contenders or champions, then that wouldn't be great. That wouldn't be great at all, because then they're not at the stage where they can fight the top level guys anymore. They're past that stage. They're not contenders in the welterweight division. If you were to do a top 15, I don't know whether either of these guys make that. So yeah, decent fight. I thought Robert Guerrero probably nicked it, but in the end there wasn't much in it. Good to watch at times. And this is what I've said before. Sometimes when you get two older fighters, it can be entertaining, because of the fact that they're flat-footed, they hold their feet more, and they throw a lot of punches. In this fight, there was that for the first 3 or 4 rounds, but then eventually, as the pace got too much for them, they started grabbing hold, they started clinching and all of that, and the fight got at times a bit messy, a bit scrappy, not the greatest to watch, because both guys were tired. And that's what happens with older fighters. And sometimes like in the Kell Brook and Amir Khan fight, I don't think either of them have got the punch resistance to go the full 12. I think one of them is going to get knocked out. And it'll be interesting to see, because obviously this was a 10-rounder. It's going to be interesting to see, because they are at the stage they're at with their careers. Is that going to be a 10-rounder? I'd like to see, the full 12 rounds, but it could be a 10-rounder, possibly just like this one. But I reckon that's obviously a much bigger fight than this, and that'll be on pay-per-view. So I think that would most likely be 12. And also, I think obviously there's a lot more anticipation around something like that. But that's what basically this fight was. This was like Victor Ortiz Guerrero is basically like not as big a version of Khan Brook. There was a bit of rivalry between these two back in the day, but let's be honest, they're not the fighters they were. And the fight was kind of entertaining, entertaining in bursts. Definitely, I definitely enjoyed it. I think it was decent to watch. I've seen fights that was hyped up so much, nowhere near as good as this, so yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. And I definitely think that there is space for two guys that have passed their best fighting each other. Like I did a video about Khan Brook, I definitely think there's space for fights like this. And sometimes fights like this can be very entertaining, because they're two guys that are vulnerable, two guys that are not quite what they used to be, two guys that haven't got the reflexes, so they stand there and trade more. Boxing skills go out the window. The only problem is with older guys, if they've got great chins, what happens is the fight can get quite messy and quite scrappy, because both guys can't get out of there. When there's two guys that are vulnerable, that haven't got great punch resistance, that makes for a very good scrap. I think Victor Ortiz is known for somebody that doesn't have the greatest chin, but Victor Ortiz was fighting somebody that Robert Guerrero, who's never been the biggest puncher, and he's also a smaller guy. So Victor Ortiz would probably be able to absorb the shot. If he was fighting somebody that was a bigger welterweight and a bigger puncher, I think Victor Ortiz may have been in trouble. But nevertheless, it was a good fight. I'm pretty sure you guys enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure you guys enjoyed watching it. But, you know, it isn't the fight it could have been a couple of years back when these two guys would have been more nearer their prime. But nevertheless, it was a decent watch. What did you guys make of it? Do you think the right man won? What would you like to see for both guys? Would you like to see them retire? Would you like to see them fight each other? Would you like them to fight somebody? Would you like Victor Ortiz to fight? Would you like Robert Guerrero to fight? Who would you like either of them to fight? Or do you want to see both of them retire? Do you think both of them, they've made a lot of money, they've got the health intact, probably best to walk away, they've got nothing to prove? Or do you think they still got more left in the tank where they can go on longer? Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.